Your soulmate took the blame for someone you love. Now they're begging to tell you everything. My beloved child. Your soulmate has been carrying a secret that was never supposed to become yours to discover. They took the blame for someone you love, knowing it could change the way you looked at them forever. And for a while, they said nothing. They let you believe the worst because exposing the truth would have meant exposing someone very close to your heart. But last night, something changed. Your soulmate finally reached the point where protecting that person became more painful than losing you. They picked up their phone, started writing a message, erased it, then tried again. What they wanted to tell you wasn't a simple confession. It was the missing piece behind a moment that may have made you question their character, their loyalty, or even their feelings for you. And there is one detail they have never told anyone. The exact reason they agreed to carry the blame in the first place. It began with a promise made under pressure. Someone you cared deeply about had made a mistake, and when the consequences started closing in, your soulmate was placed in an impossible position. Tell you what really happened and risk damaging one of your most important relationships, or stay quiet and allow themselves to become the person you blamed. They chose silence. At first, they believed the truth would eventually come out naturally. It didn't. Instead, every passing day made their silence look more suspicious. Every unanswered question created another misunderstanding. And the hardest part? They could see the distance growing between you, but they still refused to defend themselves. Don't skip, because this is where everything shifts. Your soulmate recently discovered that the person they protected may never have intended to tell you the truth at all. That realization changed something inside them. Suddenly, their sacrifice no longer felt like protection. It felt like they had helped build a lie around you. Now they're begging for the chance to explain everything because there is more at stake than clearing their name. They need you to understand what happened before someone else tells you a distorted version first. They've been replaying the conversation that started all of this, remembering the exact words spoken and the moment they reluctantly agreed to stay silent. But one particular sentence keeps haunting them. It was something the person you love said right before your soulmate accepted the blame, a sentence that made them believe keeping quiet was the only compassionate choice. Your soulmate knows revealing it could permanently change how you see someone you trust, which is why they hesitated for so long. Yet they have finally decided that you deserve truth more than anyone deserves protection from consequences. And when you hear what that person said to convince your soulmate to sacrifice their own reputation, you may realize this secret was never only about what happened. It was about what they were desperately trying to keep you from discovering. What your soulmate heard that day has never stopped echoing in their mind. The person you love looked directly at them and said, "If they find out the truth right now, I could lose them forever." That was the moment your soulmate hesitated. They knew protecting this person could cost them your trust, but they also knew how deeply you cared about them. So when they were asked to remain silent, your soulmate made a decision they thought would protect your heart. They allowed certain details to point toward them. They didn't correct assumptions. They didn't defend themselves when they easily could have. But there was something your soulmate didn't understand at the time. The mistake they were covering was only the surface. Another truth was hidden underneath it, and recently, they found evidence that changed their understanding of the entire situation. That evidence came through something surprisingly small. A conversation your soulmate was never meant to hear revealed that the person they protected had been keeping another detail hidden, not just from you, but from your soulmate too. Suddenly, pieces that never made sense began connecting. Your soulmate realized they hadn't been given the complete story when they agreed to take the blame. They had been told enough to make them feel responsible for protecting you, but not enough to understand what they were actually protecting. That realization hurt. Not because they regretted caring about you, but because their loyalty had been used against them. Stay till the end, because what happened next explains why they're so desperate to speak now. Instead of confronting that person immediately, your soulmate stayed quiet one more time. They wanted certainty. They needed to know whether they had misunderstood what they heard. So they started looking back at everything that happened before the original incident. And one forgotten detail suddenly stood out. It was a message. Not a romantic message. Not anything inappropriate. But its timing changed everything. Your soulmate remembered seeing it shortly before they were asked to accept responsibility, and at the time, the words seemed harmless. Now those same words carried an entirely different meaning. They suggested that the person you love may have known trouble was coming before they ever asked your soulmate for help. In other words, this might not have been a desperate decision made in one emotional moment. Someone may have had time to think about what they were doing, and your soulmate may have been chosen specifically because everyone knew how much they cared about you. That possibility shattered the last reason they had for remaining silent. But before telling you, your soulmate did something unexpected. They went back to the person they had protected and asked one direct question. The answer they received was only 4 words long, but those 4 words finally revealed why your soulmate had been selected to carry the blame. The answer came without hesitation, because you'd protect them. Your soulmate went completely still. In 4 words, everything became painfully clear. The person you love had understood your soulmate's feelings for you from the beginning. They knew your soulmate would rather damage their own reputation than watch you become devastated by someone else's actions. What looked like trust had actually been calculated dependence on their loyalty. Your soulmate asked another question: did you ever plan to tell them? This time, there was no immediate answer. Just silence. And that silence told your soulmate more than any confession could have. They realized they had spent all this time waiting for someone to do the right thing when that person may have been hoping the truth would stay buried forever. But something even more disturbing happened before the conversation ended. The person your soulmate protected suddenly changed their tone. Instead of explaining themselves, they warned your soulmate about what could happen if you learned everything. They said you might misunderstand. You might walk away from both of them. You might never trust either person again. For one brief moment, your soulmate almost backed down. Losing your trust was the one consequence they had feared from the beginning. Then they noticed something important. Every warning focused on what everyone else might lose. Nobody was talking about what continued silence was doing to you. Nobody was asking whether you deserved the truth. That realization ended the debate inside your soulmate. Don't skip. This was the moment they decided they would rather face your anger honestly than keep receiving your affection through a misunderstanding. They walked away from that conversation knowing the next person they needed to speak with was you. But your soulmate still had one problem. Their word alone might not be enough. After carrying the blame for so long, suddenly denying responsibility could sound convenient, even desperate. So they returned to the message they had remembered and searched for something that could establish the real sequence of events. That's when they noticed a detail they had overlooked before, a timestamp connected to another exchange. It showed that the person you love had contacted your soulmate before the moment you were told everything supposedly went wrong. Your soulmate stared at that time for several seconds because it proved one crucial thing. They had been pulled into the situation after a decision had already been made. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate now has more than an explanation. They have something that could prove they were protecting someone else all along. But the timestamp also exposed another conversation from that same night, and your name appears in it. Seeing your name in that earlier conversation changed everything your soulmate thought they understood. Until that moment, they believed you had simply become caught in the consequences of someone else's mistake. But the timestamp suggested something more complicated. You had been discussed before your soulmate was ever asked to take responsibility. The person you love had written about how you might react if the truth reached you, and they were already worried about losing your trust. Then came the line your soulmate couldn't ignore: there has to be another way to explain this. Suddenly, the request for your soulmate's silence didn't look spontaneous anymore. It looked like someone had been searching for a way out before your soulmate even entered the situation. And once your soulmate understood that, they began wondering whether taking the blame had been suggested long before they were directly asked. They kept reading, expecting the conversation to confirm their worst suspicion. Instead, they found something that made the situation even more emotional. The person you love wasn't speaking coldly about you. They sounded frightened, guilty, almost desperate to prevent you from being hurt. That mattered, because your soulmate realized this wasn't a simple story with one innocent person and one villain. Someone had made a serious mistake, then panicked over what the truth might do to you. But fear had turned into deception, and deception had eventually required another person to carry its weight. Your soulmate became that person. They sacrificed your trust because they believed they were protecting your heart. Now they understood that hiding the truth had only delayed the pain and made it more complicated. Still, one question remained: if the person you love was genuinely afraid of hurting you, why hadn't they confessed once the immediate crisis passed? The answer appeared near the end of the exchange. There was a sentence your soulmate had never seen before, because it had been sent before they became involved. If they know why I did it, they'll never look at me the same way again. Your soulmate read those words twice. The secret wasn't only about what had happened. The real danger was the reason behind it. That was what someone had been protecting all along. Your soulmate now knew they couldn't simply come to you and say, "I didn't do it." They would have to explain the motive too, even if that explanation changed one of your closest relationships forever. So they prepared everything. The timeline, the messages, the truth they had carried alone, and decided they were finally ready to face you. But just before they could reach out, the person they had protected sent one final message. And its first sentence made your soulmate realize there was still one piece of the story they didn't know. That final message began with words your soulmate never expected to read: "I didn't tell you everything." Their stomach dropped. After all the silence, all the blame, and all the damage done to your trust, there was still another layer. The person you love admitted that the original mistake had been driven by fear, not fear of being exposed, but fear of losing their place in your life. They had watched your connection with your soulmate becoming stronger, and something inside them panicked. Not because they wanted your soulmate romantically, but because they feared being left behind as your life changed. So they made a choice meant to control a situation they could no longer control. Then, when that choice created consequences, they realized your soulmate was the one person willing to protect you at personal cost. That was why the blame landed where it did. But the message contained another confession your soulmate wasn't prepared for. The person you love admitted they had almost told you the truth several times. Once, they even started writing a confession, only to delete it before sending. Each time, they imagined your disappointment and convinced themselves that another day of silence would somehow make things easier. Instead, every day made confession harder. Meanwhile, your soulmate continued carrying a reputation they never deserved. Reading this, your soulmate felt anger, but something else appeared beneath it, relief. Finally, there was acknowledgement from the person responsible. Finally, your soulmate wasn't standing alone with a truth nobody could verify. And then came the sentence that changed what they planned to tell you: you can show them this message. Your soulmate stared at those words because permission was no longer the issue. The secret had effectively been released. Yet instead of immediately forwarding everything, your soulmate stopped. There was still something they needed to understand first. They asked one final question: why are you admitting this now? The response took several minutes. When it arrived, your soulmate realized the timing wasn't accidental. The person you love had discovered that you were beginning to question the old story on your own. Something you recently noticed had made you suspicious, and they knew the truth might reach you without either of them controlling how it was told. That possibility terrified them. Your soulmate suddenly understood why everything was happening now. The confession. The permission to show you the messages. The desperate need to explain. But there was one last detail hidden near the bottom of that final message, and your soulmate nearly missed it. The person you love mentioned something you had apparently said long ago, one sentence about betrayal, forgiveness, and what you would need before trusting someone again. Your soulmate recognized those words immediately. And what they reveal about the decision your soulmate is about to make could change how this entire truth finally reaches you. Your soulmate remembered your words almost perfectly: forgiveness could be possible, but only after the complete truth was spoken without excuses. That memory stopped them from simply sending you screenshots and disappearing. They realized you deserved more than evidence dropped into your hands without context. You deserved to hear why they stayed silent, why they accepted consequences that belonged to someone else, and why they waited this long to finally defend themselves. So your soulmate began preparing to tell you everything directly. No carefully edited version. No attempt to make themselves look heroic. Because they know something uncomfortable too, even though they didn't create the original problem, they still chose to participate in the silence. And they are prepared to admit that choice may have hurt you just as deeply as the original mistake. But before reaching out, your soulmate did something nobody expected. They contacted the person you love one final time and told them, you should be there when the truth comes out. The response was immediate panic. That person wanted your soulmate to explain everything alone. They said they weren't ready to face your reaction. But your soulmate refused to become their shield again. Not this time. If forgiveness was ever going to be possible, everyone involved had to stand behind their own choices. For the first time, your soulmate drew a clear boundary. They would tell you what happened, but they would not carry someone else's guilt while doing it. Then came an unexpected reply. The person you love agreed to face you, but asked for one condition first. And that condition revealed just how afraid they were of what you might discover once everyone started speaking honestly. They asked your soulmate not to show you one specific message until they had explained it themselves. Immediately, your soulmate became suspicious. Why that message? Why protect one piece of evidence after finally agreeing to confess? They opened it again and read every line carefully. Most of it matched what they already knew, until they reached a sentence buried near the middle. It referred to a private conversation about you that had happened before the entire situation began. Your soulmate had never been told about that conversation. More importantly, the message suggested that the original mistake may have started because someone believed they were making a decision on your behalf, without ever asking what you wanted. That changed the emotional center of everything. Stay till the end, because your soulmate is no longer begging merely to clear their name. They're trying to return something that was quietly taken from you, the right to know the truth and choose for yourself. And now only one question remains. What exactly did that private conversation reveal about you? The private conversation revealed something your soulmate never expected. The person you love had convinced themselves they knew what was best for you. They believed you were becoming emotionally vulnerable, that your growing connection with your soulmate might eventually lead to disappointment, and that somehow they needed to interfere before you got hurt. But you had never asked them to protect you that way. They had interpreted your feelings, predicted your future, and acted without giving you the chance to make your own decision. When their interference created consequences, fear took over. That was when your soulmate became involved. Suddenly, the entire story made sense. Your soulmate hadn't taken the blame for one accidental mistake. They had unknowingly covered the consequences of someone trying to control an outcome in your life. And now they understood why that one message had been treated like the most dangerous piece of evidence. What happened next surprised even your soulmate. Instead of becoming furious, they became painfully calm. They finally understood that exposing the truth wasn't about choosing sides. It wasn't about making you reject someone you love or proving that your soulmate had been innocent all along. It was about giving you back the choice everyone else had been making for you. So your soulmate sent one simple message: I'm ready whenever you are. No accusations. No dramatic threats. Just an invitation to hear everything. They gathered the messages and the timeline, but decided not to use them as weapons. If you asked for proof, they would show you. If you became angry, they would accept it. And if you needed distance afterward, they would respect that too. Because there was one thing your soulmate finally understood. Loving someone does not mean deciding which truths they are strong enough to handle. But there is still one final truth your soulmate desperately wants you to hear from their own mouth. Taking the blame wasn't only about protecting the person you love. Deep down, your soulmate was also afraid. They feared that if they exposed someone important to you, you might believe they were trying to separate you from that person. So they chose the path that seemed least selfish at the time. They let themselves become the one you misunderstood. Now they know silence was never the answer. They are begging to tell you everything.